right, guys. This episode, this is Jesus Catañon's Real Estate Podcast, and we got Mr. Josh Cadillac also here with me. And on the phone, we have old friend of mine, Mark. If you can, just step aside a little bit. I'm going to blow smoke up your ass here a little bit. Mark has been in commercial real estate for as long as I've known him. Mark, how much in commercial loans you did last year?
700 million.
700 million. So he's pretty damn versed in commercial real estate. So yeah, Mark and I actually met 2000 and what was that, Mark? 7, 8 at A-Rod's office. At A-Rod, yeah. A-Rod from the Yankees. We actually met. It was right before the shit hit the fan, or did it hit the fan already?
It hit the fan.
There was shit all over the fan at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and Mark and I, what we like to say, we like to call it, we were definitely in the trenches together. And man, you know what? We definitely, if we were ever gonna write books, I would definitely have a chapter on Mark there, because we definitely got out of that shithole together. I don't know how. If I think back now, all the stuff that we did and all the deals that we pulled off, but yeah, it's been hundreds of deals that we've closed together, and every single one of them mattered at that moment. You know, it mattered, meaning we needed to eat, and we needed to we needed, to survive, and we did, and we're both doing very well now. So it's a beautiful love story, Mark. So Mark, the reason, so today we only got Mark for a little bit, and the reason why we have him for a little bit, it's actually the reason why we're even doing this podcast. Mark, what are you busy with nowadays in commercial real estate? What's your last couple of weeks been like? What's occupying your time?
Well, back to your point, Jesus, and thanks for having me on. I mean, I know it sounds a little more formal than most of our conversations.
Than what we're used to, right?
Yeah, but thanks for having me on, and for everyone who's listening. There's back to your point of when we met. There's a saying: smooth seas never created an experienced sailor, right? So we've been through some rough waters, and we've seen. I don't think anyone's seen this movie before, but we have when it comes to financial downturns and crisis and recoveries, we've seen it before and experienced it and gotten through it. This one obviously is different because in essence it could be considered what we call an act of God or something that is outside of control. Most of the other crises that we have experienced have been, as a result of economic, policies or regulation or failure to put controls in place that led to those downturns. This one's different because it caught everyone off guard, and it's
the whole world too. Which is big.
Yeah, and it's a health issue, right? And so. And being the leaders of the free world, that's the delicate subject, is how do you have to put human life in front of a financial opportunity. But the one thing that we have seen is that the government has stepped in and they've done the right things. The core of our business is similar to on the residential side is Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. We are a Freddie Mac Fannie Mae lender. Similar to the single-family home side, the difference is we do this for commercial real estate apartment buildings, and we account for a big percentage of the liquidity in the market for rental housing, and it is through the Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae programs. We are a lender and in essence partner. I'm sorry, excuse me, for both agencies. And the advantage of that is when the federal government stepped in and said, we're going to give relief to renters, they immediately provided relief for their lending partners as ourselves.
What does that do? So let's stop there for a second, if you don't mind, Mark. Okay, so when you're saying because first thing you start hearing is, well, people saying I'm not going to pay rent. All right, so that has an immediate. And now when you have what's her name, Ocasio-Cortez saying that everybody should boycott and not pay rent for a year and all that kind of stuff. So all that talk and all that don't pay rent, don't pay mortgage talk. What does that do in particular to like a person who owns a 300 unit building? And what are the numbers looking like? So on a 300 unit building, how many people are paying rent? How many are not? What are you seeing on the street as far as that?
So what we've seen, and what we've seen is surprisingly in April, for the most part, collections have been anywhere between 75 to 85%. We have seen Broward County seems to have been hit a little harder.
Interesting.
Than Miami-Dade County. But the reality is, we're seeing most of the default and rent payments are coming from more of the urban core, the live work areas where all of the everything that changed in this cycle, where folks moved from the suburbs to be close to their jobs. Those jobs and that environment created a lot of service industry, whether it be, the hotels followed some of these companies into the urban core, but more than anything, hospitality, on the restaurant, entertainment side, and the mindset of that tenant base, mostly single millennials, who were spending the majority of their income on living somewhere near where they work, that was close to the urban core and that live work environment. We are seeing those properties have taken a harder, tougher hit than some of the traditional suburban garden style apartments where you have more of your what they call essential workers, right? Firefighters, teachers, police officers, transportation. The core of that construction. So a lot of those jobs are either still paying, even though children are homeschooling or doing school from home.
But that could change in May if things don't get back to normal too, drastically.
May 1st. And that's what everyone's looking to is for the May the May component of that. But the reality is there is a certain level of rent where the unemployment benefits that are available cover certain types of properties at that affordability calculator. But the urban core, newer stuff, there's really no gap to be filled there. And I think that's the biggest concern is, when you're looking at $3 a foot rents, $4,000 or $5,000 rents, and urban Miami, urban core Miami, more in the urban core Fort Lauderdale, Los Olas area. When you start to look at that and the demographic of the folks that are living there, you have bartenders that are making and waiters that are making $70,000, $80,000, $100,000, working, long shifts, but they were making good money and they were living in these properties. And, that is where we feel that the hardest hit properties are going to be. Now, with that said, Freddie and Fannie have stepped in. They put a forbearance program. April is better than expected. No one really knows what May is going to look like, and everyone's looking to the May numbers because that's really going to give us a feel for.
And that comes out when? Because May? Let's assume payments are due in May 1st and May 1st through the 5th. So, when are you guys going to tally that up? Like May 10th, May 15th?
May 10th, May 15th. A lot of folks have worked out, either payment plans or waived late fees. So the rents are trickling in. But the reality is, come May 7th, who's able to pay their rent and who's not able to pay their rent.
Yeah.
And then the reality is until June, you're really not going to know who lost their job and who has not lost their job. And who can actually, and who's actually applied for benefits and who hasn't applied for benefits. And then who's taking advantage of
system
of the system, right? Because you there's no way that you could. There's no court. The courts aren't accepting or filing evictions, but the reality is, even when they do, and this is a concern for most property owners, even when they do open up to file and process evictions at the courts, the amount of backlog that there's going to be is going to trickle into,
It's going to be
really.
like back in the days when foreclosures would take like a year and a half to happen. What's going to happen
in
with
Broward
evictions.
County? It's still that bad for foreclosures.
Oh, really?
The Broward County court system they went from like 7 judges down to 2. We have one foreclosure case that we've been working on for 5 years.
Holy shit!
And you could you could have someone squatting in your apartment for 6 months without paying rent. So again, a lot of unknowns. We're obviously in the business of not spinning, but being optimistic, obviously, because this is our livelihood, and I believe everyone that's listening is their livelihood.
Yeah, but that's where you're good here, because you bring a unique perspective, because you're a street guy. You started from the bottom in this business, and you've always managed to keep your ear to the ground type of stuff. But you're also part of an enormous company. I mean, Hunt Mortgage Group is a damn machine. It's one of the biggest. It's a Wall Street, the Wall Street type companies and everything like that. So, what are you hearing from like? And I know nobody knows, and I get that. But what's Wall Street saying? Per se, as far as what's going to happen here, and is this going to be a real estate as a whole, is it going to be, because look, we were talking about it last week, like 500,000 and under residential real estate, I think is probably the safest of all the, real estate sections, and then you would maybe say industrial, because I think a lot of people are going to start moving from these storefronts into warehouses and start shipping. And
I think you're going to also see there's going to be a strategic move to bring a lot of manufacturing back to the U.S. because we realized how strategically susceptible we are.
We got caught with our pants down.
Yeah, China making 90% of our pharmaceuticals, we've determined now, is not a safe place for us as a nation to be. So some of that manufacturing, I think from a strategic standpoint, they're going to force it to come back.
Yeah, Made in America is going to become way cooler now, and people are going to be willing to pay a little bit more for Made in America. I'm assuming.
So I mean, the other cool thing with that is, hopefully, if that happens, those are manufacturing jobs, which are not necessarily high skill jobs, which will hopefully take and help remove some of this excess labor market that's going to exist from businesses that have shut down business, that are not going to reopen. Because there's going to be a piece of whatever's closed that's never going to reopen. There's going to be restaurants that we're going to lose forever.
Yeah, Mark. What worst hit is probably strip centers, right? Shopping centers.
Well, so retail's going to take a big hit here, because the reality is and hospitality. But the reality is, and just from an investment standpoint, this is where, as a country, traditionally Americans have short memories. But this one is one that, the reality is folks are not, even when they come back, do you really need to go to the mall, to get something, when you realize that, you can get what you need and keep it simple and not have to go into a store and shop. I think that the culture here, right, and the fact that we're going to be seeing folks wearing masks, and we're going to, this is something that I believe is going to be permanent, but not so much from the consumer standpoint, from the investor standpoint. If you have capital in retail, or if you have capital in hospitality, in the hotel business, and that a pandemic like this, that is not SARS, that is not Zika, that is not something that that something can shut you down overnight, and that possibility exists, and that we still do not have a vaccine for this, right? I think that the investor mentality is going to be something that is so intense and apprehensive that we don't know the downside of that and the effect of that.
Right.
Well, it's going to have to get baked into the cake at some point. It's going to be an additional risk factor that's going to have to take into account when you decide to put capital there. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, has confidence in the stock market been somewhat eroded after watching it go up basically for the last 10 years, and now all of a sudden people have gotten a reality check that, hey, it doesn't just go up, it goes the other way too. So I mean, I think a lot of the different investment types are getting shaken up by this. I think real estate actually comes out of this looking pretty good because real estate values have been decent. But I think on the commercial side, no, there's definitely going to be some fallout as far as investors having to take that into account. But this is also not unprecedented. It's unprecedented in our modern memory, but it did happen in the turn of the century in the 19 teens. There was an outbreak. And even the meme you sent me today is true. There was a smallpox epidemic during the revolution in this country.
It was George Washington, was it?
It was George Washington, absolutely. That's
sticking the middle finger out and saying, "You guys, we had a war.
We had a revolution.
We had a revolution with smallpox, sticking the middle finger, calling everybody pussies."
And so I think that part of this is also bred from all the information that exists out there. There's 24/7 bombarding of this information about this. And that's just, it's a new, because of the amount of communication that we have, this is stuff that the world has seen before. It's reacted to. There's been a lot more deaths, absolutely. And then it kind of moves on. The page turns. There's going to be more lingering results from this because there's just such a deluge of information.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I think what, without getting into politics, I think what is the most impactful thing that has happened here in a democratic, free market country is that government has stepped in and shut down business.
Absolutely.
And so the investor mentality behind that is not it has nothing to do with politics. And are we entering into an authoritarian state where the government can step in and do this?
You get a conspiracy theory all day. I mean, there's like 1,000 of them out there now.
Well, we know this is a pandemic. We know it's a health issue. We know that I think most folks will agree that because it is not an authoritarian state and because to get to what we consider now will be the new normal and get back to work, you had to set a certain mindset and get to a certain point and come back from there to control the spread of this. But the investor mentality is, I think everyone needs to get ready for this to have a drag on it. And I think there's going to be some pain. I think folks are going to be able, for most part, folks are going to be able to survive it. There's not going to be economic growth here for, I think, 12 to 18 months. The fact that someone can say, oh, we're going to come back in the summer and Q4, you're going to see things come back, that's not accurate without a vaccine or a cure. And the investors are saying, and to answer your point, what's Wall Street saying and what's the investor community?
Wall Street saying, Mark?
They're saying, listen, this is all great and dandy, but how do we know that we're not going to be back here at the same time next year? And until there's assurances, and in certain sectors like retail, are folks really going to, even if they have the money to go out and buy, do they have the necessity now after being able, if you did not know what Amazon was,
well, you know it
and
now.
you did not care for it, you know who they are now.
I didn't even know Costco delivered. Costco's even delivers.
What I hear from this is basically Mark is saying there's going to be a tremendous opportunity in commercial real estate,
right? Because
the reality of it is, I saw today they started human trials on a vaccine. So we know it's not going to be an insurmountable thing. I mean, I watched 2008 through 10 occur, right? We watched it happen. Who are the people that made money? They waited for everybody to run the other way, and they started getting in.
Yeah, but the reality, the reality is, the reality is, there are certain sectors where capital, right, is going to say, do I really want to go like what's going to be the most resilient, and it's probably going to be industrial.
Sure.
When you get into, because of packaging, storing, delivery, so you need a place to warehouse and store these things and distribution. Right. Multifamily, and back to the point of where's the strongest point of multifamily compared to the $500,000 and below home. The strongest point is the most affordable. Rents, right? Because the
lower income multifamily,
right? No,
the shit flows downhill, right? So the guy that lives in a $4,000 apartment is going to move into a $2,000 apartment. The guy that lives in a $2,000 apartment is going to live into what? And so when you get to the bottom of the barrel, the only place to go from there is to live on the street,
cardboard box.
And so you're going to see those properties benefit from a bigger demand, and the higher end properties are going to suffer. That's where the opportunity.
It's happening in real estate too, Mark. I mean, in residential. Sorry, $1 million property for $1 million right now. A lot of these lenders are starting to hold back. A lot of these like bank statement programs are starting to hold back. So what's going to keep 500,000 and under below is going to be, it's pretty damn close to the FHA limits. You still have some conventional stuff that lend. So it's you could go in with the smaller down payments. And now, so the reason why I could tell you that I feel confident that 500,000 and under is not going to get hit as much is because I'm on the ground floor there, and what I see every day is. My worry would be where I'd be panicking would be if I had a closing and no new deals coming in, right? So everything's coming out and I'm running out of, so it's not, it's every day. Every day. It's
nope.
The rhythm might be a tiny bit slower, but it's still happening. So now my question to you is, is there still, if you had people out there applying for financing on these multifamily buildings, are these guys saying, well, let me hold on and see what's happening? Or are you still having people knock on your door and say, hey, Mark, I need financing for this 300 unit, apartment building? Like I'm seeing for, new loan applications here with my lenders. I'm seeing with new contracts, new escrows, that type of stuff. So what are you seeing as far as immediate, in and out?
Well, I mean, so for financing, Freddie and Fannie are still in business, and they are the backstop.
So they're like the FHA of residential. So we're good, basically.
Yeah, their purpose is to provide liquidity when no one else is. Now the banks are pulling back; they're not providing balance sheet. They're deferring to Freddie, Fannie, and FHA on just like they are on the single family home side. But the banks are not exposing their capital right now. A lot of the banks are making a lot of money with these payroll protection loans, where they're making anywhere between 4% and 5%.
I heard Bank of America is going 100% PPP now. They're going to stop residential lending completely.
Well, because it's all government backed. They're guaranteed.
Making more money, less risk. It just makes sense.
They're making money, less risk. But that's where Freddie and Fannie, step up and see that. But to get to the point of your question, acquisitions business has completely fallen off. For now, if you were looking at a deal in February that was a value add deal, where you can buy an apartment building, bring the cabinets and new flooring and bring it up to what the building down the street was comparable and try and push rent. That business model has died. I can tell you countless deals that are under contract with deposits that are going to be negotiated in the courts. I'm not sure if there's a judge that's going to grant.
That's going to be super interesting too.
A seller a claim on a deposit, but
do your contracts have an act of God? Because the residential contracts have like an act of God section, like a force majeure. Do you guys have?
They do, but if this thing's determined it was man-made out of a lab, it's going to be interesting to see when the attorney.
God made the guy in the lab, I guess, right?
It's an act of China.
Yeah.
Force China.
Force.
But listen, it goes. Listen, there's a lot of things that you're going to see. Not to get sidetracked off the answer there, but there's a lot. You're going to see, like loss of rent, right? Insurance. If you have loss of rent, a lot of lenders force you to, or a requirement that you have a loss of rent for if you have a hurricane or fire, so that you can service the loan. and there's insurance for that. The insurance companies are taking a stance that that this does not qualify as a loss of rent. The president stood up at one of his press conferences and says, the insurance companies need to step up. Why would you pay loss of rent and not have the ability to claim,
right,
that you're losing renters because of right. So it goes back to the act of God. So there's going to be a ton of that. But back to the question, the acquisitions business, this is kind of what I tell when I get asked the question. I ask, would you today, right now, would you, if you have a choice, would you go out and buy something not knowing what the value is tomorrow, even though you knew what the value was
it's a moving target.
a month ago, or are you going to keep that money under your mattress or inside your bank account? And so the acquisitions business has completely died off. The refinance business. I was just going to
ask you, refis must be pretty good though.
There was a short window where everyone thought that this was going to be a 30-day thing, and we were going to get back to work. And some guys took advantage of it. They came out. They got their interest rates dropped. Treasury floors went below 1. They were at 40, 50 bips. Some guys took advantage, rate locked, and were able to close quick and got some great deals. For everyone else, the market had to adjust. They set a floor on the Treasury rates. Fannie did first. Freddie Mac kind of put, floor on pricing. That was phase one. As this thing extended and it got worse, then they started putting interest reserves because, when they announced 90 days of not paying, that you don't have to pay your rent for 90 days or there's going to be no foreclosures, the lenders had to put mitigants in. So if you had a new deal that hadn't closed and you were not eligible for forbearance, you now had to come in and do a deal with a structure of 9 to 12 months, depending on the risk profile of the deal, of interest reserve, principal, and interest. You're talking about, on a $10 million deal, you're talking about holding back $1.5 million, $1 million, like $700,000 of proceeds. That kills a lot of deals with the refinances. Even though some folks would say, I'd rather have the interest reserve and not worry about this crisis for 12 months. And the reality is a 12-month principal and interest reserve is really going to last you 24 to 36 months because that's assuming no one pays and the building's empty, right? But the underwriting has changed. It's gotten more aggressive as far as being conservative from the lender standpoint, but there's still liquidity in the market. Now, a lot of these interest reserves have standard language. For example, once the state order or the residential or the federal, whichever one supersedes, once that order is lifted, and whatever is the governing body that lifts that order where the property is located, you need to maintain the debt service coverage that the loan was signed under, whether it's a 125 or 135 for 90 days. And once you've done that for 90 days, they will release the funds for the interest reserve. So it's your money. It's there for the sake of the property. It's there for the sake to service the loan. But that was another phase of, the market shock of, okay, do I really need to refinance now? Do I think that treasuries are going to, go up? Why don't I wait 90 days and see if they lift this interest reserve? People are going to get back to work slowly. Maybe the capital markets gain more confidence and I can still get a good rate in 90 days. So the overall outlook and the optimism here, with as much pain as there's been and is that we have experienced our summer with this COVID-19, which in our business, summers traditionally are a little slower.
Yeah.
Folks are traveling. They're spending more time with their kids.
Yeah.
They're working less. If you talk to the hospitality folks, it's in some markets like South Florida, they'll tell you the summer's slower, that these last 2 months were our biggest months. So it's a double hit. But as far as overall, economy, capital markets, they're usually flat in the summer. Most of Americans are traveling, spending more time with their kids. It's a different mentality as far as the grind and working. So we're hoping that even though it's going to be a slow startup, that we will gain. We won't lose as much from the summer because it's slower.
Well, it might become productive, Mark, because if okay, so school was supposed to end January what? I mean June 3rd or something like that. I tell you what, man.
Yeah.
I don't know about your house. You know, unless you're a way better parent than I am, I can't wait for these fucking kids to get the fuck out of the house. I just want them out of the house. I want them out. I want them in a summer camp. I want them in anything. I want them out. I want them out. Maybe I don't love them as much anymore. I don't know what it is, but they're driving me insane, man. They're in the house. My wife is I mean, it's just, it's crazy. You know, they're fighting and the schoolwork and the whole situation. I mean, I think what's going to happen is that people are going to, I think our summer, we're having it now. Like we're about to end, you know, in 15 days or whatever. When this school actually ends, is really what's going to be going back to work. I think people are going to send their kids to summer school. I mean, to summer camps, and they're going to get back to work because they're going to have to, because they've been locked up in a house for a month or 2 months. You know, so it might be a weird thing. It might be where we are experiencing our summer right now, and then, you know, come mid-June. Are we going to be taking vacations? Probably not. People are still going to be a little bit worried. So what are they going to do? They're going to get back to work. So I think the dynamic of this year is going to be completely off. You know, I don't know what's going to happen come winter, when it's winter and fall and all that kind of stuff. I mean, and spring, but we just passed spring. Yeah. So
there's the interesting dynamic too of, you know, you have people that have not been horribly economically affected by this, folks that have not missed a beat and work from home. And that represents a big portion of the labor force that have been able to transition to that. And you have the other people that have been economically influenced. But the folks that have been forced to work at home, they've actually been saving money.
Yeah.
You know, they can't go out to dinner. They can't go out to a show. They can't spend their money on all the things. I mean, unless they're buying a bunch of stuff on the internet and having it shipped to their home, there's really not a whole lot for them to take and
well, and if you haven't skipped a beat and you're still getting the government, you haven't lost your job and you get that stimulus money, and you've been saving money, and flights to Italy, not Italy, maybe that's a bad example, but I don't know, Australia are like $50.
Yeah.
Do you take the trip to Australia now? I don't know, Mark. I mean, you have a pretty, you know, close connection to the travel business. What's and I think the travel business has a lot to do with how we're going to recover. Are people going to start getting on planes with masks for that $50 trip to Europe or what?
Well, look, I think that's going to take some time, but I also look. I think the reality is that most, for example, our company, we, you know, after Hurricane Sandy in New York, we have our systems and everything was backed up, and for the most part, there's a lot of jobs. I agree with Khaled. There's a lot of jobs that are able to work work remotely, work from home. Now, again, this is phase 3 of, or 2 or 3, depending. Now you're talking about an asset class that may be affected 12 months down the road because of this, right? Because if you're a company and your production's down, you start to realize that your production's down, but it's not because you can't work from remotely. What's going to happen to the office sector?
Oh,
how many people? How much space do you actually need?
Well, you just figured it out. You might need 1/10 of it.
And by the way, what I found and I've seen is most of the folks working from home, you know, just because they need a break or because they're not. Everyone's always available now. 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock. Everyone's always available because there's no disconnect. So, you know, although, you know, production is down because of the overall economy, I think that folks a lot of folks, the 9 to 5 employee that would punch the clock is probably working a lot harder from home now than they were actually when, because
and that's what the Googles of the world had figured out a long time ago, that, you know, people can work from home, and you can make it optional to come to the office dressed like you're about to go to the gym, and you're still very productive, probably more. And you know, so people are going to figure that out, and the businesses that don't need somebody at home, like accounting and, you know, accounting firms, for example, dude, you could do numbers from anywhere. You can sit down in front of a computer You're going to be happier there. You're going to be more productive. That type of stuff. So it's
but there is major challenges even in our industry. For example, appraisers, they can't get into units right now. Nobody wants someone coming in their unit. You don't want to send an employee, into an apartment building, confined quarters, elevators, going into units, doing inspections, engineering companies, all the due diligence that needs to get done. But there is things evolving. There's a lot of municipalities that recording offices have closed, right? So even if you wanted to close a loan, you can't. Where they're looking at virtual, inspections, Zoom, but with that comes potential for fraud. Who's on the hook for that? What do the disclosures look like?
Here's another thing: if you're living in a 400, the condo market going to take a huge ass kicking too? Because if you live in a 400, I'm one of the ones that I'm not saying I'm tough or anything. I just, for whatever reasons, this is not freaking me out, right? But if you're one of those, like I have many friends that are just completely freaked out, and you live in a 400 unit building.
Oh yeah, it's
and
paranoid.
You're stuck in elevators, and it's. Are you reconsidering that? Do you rather now live in a single family home?
You're gonna buy a farm?
Are you gonna? Yeah. Is the condo market gonna take an ass kicking now? I don't.
Well, the condo market was already taking a bit of an ass kicking.
It was. The luxury condo market. I don't even know what's gonna happen with that. And I think that's when we look at the charts. I think that's gonna. We're gonna see commercial, some sectors of commercial taking a hit. We're gonna see condo stuff. We're gonna see luxury stuff, but. Again, I'm seeing ground floor. I'm seeing 500,000 and under. Workforce, single family homes are going to be all right.
I think you have to take into account what I like to call the Twinkie factor, which is Americans are kind of like fat kids with a Twinkie sitting on the table. They can tell themselves no for a while.
Yeah.
When it comes to their own comfort, Americans won't go long without adjusting for their own comfort, and so like. We can sit here and say, "Oh, everybody's worried about this." I remember after 9/11, nobody wanted to get on a plane. I figured the next day after 9/11 was the best day in the world to get on a plane. If they were never going to do it another day, it would be the next day, right? And it took a while for the airline industry to recover from that.
Yeah, like Mark says, they have short memories.
And so 100% they can resist the Twinkie on the table for a while. Oh, I can't be in a building like that building's got a nice spa. The gym is great there. And next thing you know, they're moving in. So yeah, I think in the short term, there's the bell curve of like how sane people react, and then the outliers. And of course, we're going to hear about the outliers because that's the only ones that anybody wants to talk about anymore. The person that's out there runs for the coronavirus, streaking the coronavirus ward, licking all the door handles on one end, and then the people that's got a hazmat suit and lead-lined underwear on the other end of the spectrum that won't leave their home.
Yeah, look, and talking about 9/11, Mark, what do you think about? Okay, so I don't want to be overly optimistic, right? But we Mark has a funny saying too that I wanted to remind me exactly how it went, but we listen, man, we're officially old schoolers in this business. We've lived through 2001. Right, 9/11, which a lot of things, it was a weird time, which was followed by the best boom in real estate probably ever, and we lived through 2008, right? So I'm seeing this, Mark, more as a 2001. What does that mean? That the United States? Let me get my thought out first, and then I'm gonna. Okay, so because I want you to have my whole thought in your brain when you because I have a feeling I've known you long enough to know kind of where you're gonna go with it, but 2001, we had to show the world that we were not going to fall down because of this. We had to show the world that we were going to recover from this. So the United States is going to do everything possible, even things that are dangerous to the future economy, to get us up and running again. And I think the real danger is not going to be now. It's going to be later on. But right now, we're going to have to make a fake boom. Okay. And I think we're going to recover from this faster than that, because we're going to have to find some type of vaccine, because everybody knows that. Okay. And if once that comes out, that's great. And then we're going to flood the streets with money, right? We're going to offer cheap money to the banks. So what about that? I mean, it's possible this thing, we might rebound from this year. It's possible,
Well, so, I spoke on a panel in February, and I was told I was bleak. Because this was my thesis, and I said we've been in a healthy economy now for 10 years. We've been recovering out of a recession for 10 years. We've been in a healthy economy, what we needed to realize, and I said this at the time, I said, there's going to be an event, and I'm looking for the video of this because, you know, I was told by my colleagues on the panel that I was doom and gloom, but I said, there's going to be an event, okay, and we don't know what it's going to look like, but the reality is that we were at a point.
Yeah.
We were at a point where unemployment was at an all-time low, and it had been maintained that way for probably the longest time. There's only one place to go from there. So the way I like to look at the world is to say, you know, that we were heading into this regardless. There was going to be forces or something. The question is that were we that delicate that it crashed so hard, so fast because of this virus? Because the reality is, if we had 20% unemployment, right, or 15% unemployment, or even 10%, this wouldn't be as painful. It's painful when you look at the job losses because those jobs were at an all-time high.
Right.
So So what I do think is that, you know, we almost were at a point where we needed to self-induce a recession because this economy wasn't going to last forever. It never does. It was on a road to recovery, and it had. So my hope is that we're forced to take our medicine. We don't put Band-Aids on something, and we go through a recession that gradually would have lasted us 2 years, 3 years to get out of. You know, we find a cure for this thing, right? Businesses are still going to take 2 or 3 years to recover, but it won't be every sector. To answer your question, it'll be more like a 9/11 because it's going to be the travel, the insurance, the fear factor businesses, the fear factor sectors, and that, you know, and that'll trickle into office because people are going to want to work from home. But the reality is, there's a lot of Americans that were employed, you know, that had $5,000 in savings to go on vacation this summer, and they don't. I was supposed to go to Europe, to Spain, and I was supposed to get back last Sunday, and guess what? You know, I'm still spending $400 a week on groceries. But I saved a lot of money by not going there. So I think that, you know, the fact that this thing, you know, dropped like a weight, you know, a weighted ball, and it just hit the ground. I think that pain and the job losses, unfortunately, for those that are losing them, are all, if you look at the sectors that are most affected, those sectors are going to be affected by any recession, right?
Sure.
But because people are not going to go to the stores as much. They're not going to travel as much. They're not going to go to Disney World as much. They're not. So the fact that it's been so hard and fast, and that there's only one place to go now from where they're at. So there was only one place to go from where we were at before. There's only one place to go now from where we're hopefully at or soon to be at, because it dropped fast. Like there was no downward curve. When you talk about curves with the virus, there was no downward curve for these businesses, right? Even with the stimulus, even with that, that's great. That's all that's going to do is make the recovery faster, but that's not going to, none of that stimulus money is going to, you know, put all those people back to work immediately. It's going to be some sort of a stabilizer.
Right. And you're going to have places like Orlando. Disney World's going to be closed for a little bit. They're talking about 2021, so Orlando's going to take an ass kicking. All those vacation rentals and all that kind of stuff like that, right? But is Miami, Miami going to take a hit? Is other regular places?
I don't think Miami is. I'll tell you why, Ben. This is what we need to keep in account. I know you like my saying, but if you feel bad for the guy if you feel sorry for the guy that has no shoes, think about the guy that has no feet. We live in the United States of America, and we still have feet, and we're still walking. Think about all the countries that Miami benefits from every time there is a crisis, whether it's a dictator, or an earthquake, a national event, a narco-terrorist state. there's a lot of
What's that saying on
upper.
that? We're one social.
We're one revolution away from a real estate boom.
Yeah.
Well, what we used to say is, the United States sneezes and the rest of the world gets a cold. What's happened is now the United States sneezes and the rest of the world gets pneumonia. And so, if you're a person that has a business in one of these, emerging third world countries, and that you're very successful, but you've been able to deal with the security issues, you've been able to deal with the political issues for years. But there's a point where, again, it goes back to, okay, my family's sick. I mean, there's a pandemic, and I'm here, and when I could be in the United States, and I could be in a position. Just doctors, lawyers, folks that have degrees and work in their countries can come here and get their licenses and bring their family here. For them, there is a cost of lifestyle. Having a certain amount of employees at your home and efficiencies. But the reality is South Florida has always benefited from these crises, and we've always been the first to come out of these things, because typically whenever we go into a major recession, especially in today's global economy, we bring the rest of the world down with us. Sure. And because we're the anchor. So the fact that hopefully this could recover, because it was so drastic, it could recover as fast as it dropped. When I say fast, relative, because the comeback always takes longer than the drop, because the drop. What we don't know is that the downside of these markets, we could never really pinpoint when it actually happened. And what I'm saying is that there's a really good possibility that this market was already experiencing a downturn and we hadn't seen it, because you never see it till it happens. And this thing just accelerated it. But I do think that we live in a special situation in Miami. As I like to say, we're the closest country to the United States with the American passport. I think we're going to benefit from a lot of international, and this time it's not going to be so much flight capital. I think it's going to be actual folks that are going to come here, not just bring their money here. They're going to migrate here and stay here. Because experiencing a health situation like this and seeing how, for example, the president, do I think that doing nothing? Do I think that a lockdown, was necessary? I think some sort of, hey, we got
restriction. I think it's some sort of restriction. Listen, man.
Yeah, look.
Well, I mean, they were coming from a place of not knowing what they were dealing with. And I mean, that really, we're going to have to take and use the hindsight to sit there and say, hey, little kids were never really getting this thing. Yeah. Why did we shut down and so there's going to be those kind of questions that get asked after the fact. But I mean, the fundamental thing that I think makes this really so unusual is we had such a strong economy going into this, and it was like a light switch gets flipped. The government says, hey, all this consumer demand goes away. And so the question is, it seemed like we were in a strong economy. And so now you're coming from a strong economy, you're going into this. What does the recovery look like? Because usually when there's a drop like this, it's because there's something fundamentally wrong with the economy, and that causes the drop. So, you've gone from a position of strength now, trying to come back, bounce back from this government-mandated lack of demand. What does that picture look like? Because we don't have any historical context to go to.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't, guys. I'm not trying to be optimistic. I'm not. I'm really not. I'm starting. I want to think that there's two factors here. Humans are not going to stay uncomfortable for much longer. Like you say, the Twinkie rule and the whole situation, right? They're just not. The mask. People are going to get fucking tired of those masks. They're just going to get tired of those masks. You can't continue. You can't continue to have to do a line to go into the supermarket. All of that stuff, I think, is going to go away, and people are going to get used to it. Mark, when we were, listen, kind of like when we were growing up, it was AIDS, right? Mark, everybody was dying of AIDS. Remember? And it was a lot more people than this. A lot more people. It was millions of people.
Oh yeah.
It was millions of people. and we made adjustments, and we had to be careful, and we had to do things, and so
And a much higher mortality rate too.
Ridiculous mortality rate. And then it was also a brand new thing in the 80s, and nobody knew what it was. Initially, it was, only the gay people were getting it, and then they realized it wasn't, and so, and it wasn't shut down. So I understand. Listen, hindsight is 2020. I get it. So forget about the past. But I think that people are now starting to realize, all right, well, we have to continue on with life. So when they open up those restaurants, I think that a couple things are going to have. There's going to be plexiglass in between, from table to table, and there's going to be these safety blankets, because that's all it's going to be. Because if you have a fucking plexiglass from table to table, it's not going to save you, but you're going to feel safer. You're going to feel safer. But after that, all of that's going to go back to normal. And the fact of the matter is that there's going to be some pent up use, a pent up demand of wanting to get out there. Man, I tell you what, listen, Mark. I'm dying for a drink, man. Not in my house. I'm not going to sit down at a bar. How many times have we sat down just by ourselves in a bar and just had a drink? And it's awesome, right? Going to a restaurant. We're going to appreciate the shit out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that's going to go away soon. I think we've never imagined that's going to be taken away from us. So I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I do think there's going to be maybe not a super sharp V, but they call it like a U-shaped recovery where, people are going to start going out to the streets, and we're talking about unemployment, Mark, being at 20% now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but a lot of those are furloughs, though. A lot of those are furloughs. They're not job losses, though, Mark.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, look, we were going in. I still believe that we were going into this regardless. That our economy was so, they call it a bubble, right? And the bubble's got to burst, right? Again, unemployment at an all-time low for that long, right? Was a good economy for everyone. I mean, it wasn't just a good economy for the wealthy. At the fact that everyone had a job was a good economy for everyone, and we know that is not sustainable. And it, my point is the more that Americans come to grips with that, we had a good run. Right. If you look at these downturns, they happen every 10 to 12 years, sometimes 8, 9. We had a good run. It was coming, right? So we're taking our medicine. We're staying home. We're doing things. We're actually,
right, but the other medicine didn't come with with the United States having to get us out of this sickness. You know what I'm saying? So that's the difference between it. You're right. At some point we were going to get it. And by the way, the music stops at some point. But you know what? I know a lot of people were saying, including you and including a lot of people, including myself, hey, listen, when's this going to end? So this is almost like, all right, guys, it ended. Are we ready? We're ready to start again?
Can we stop complaining?
Okay, we're done. Okay, so we're in a recession. We're probably going to hit some sort of minor depression. All right, let's go. Let's go on the next run. Okay, so it's kind of like...
and listen, I think it needed. Again, when you talk about social distancing, what I think you really are talking about is social training, right? And what needed to happen. Right. What needed to happen was, I'm the kind of guy that, I mean, it's awkward, but, when I like airport bathrooms, I like that there's no doors. I like that everything is digital. I like that you don't have to touch anything. You can walk in, you can go to the bathroom, if you don't have to sit down, right?
So if you wake up in the morning and you have to go to the bathroom, you have to do your necessity, you wait till you get to the airport?
No,
okay.
But I like.
You don't like them that much, okay? All right.
I like airport bathrooms. I travel. I'm on a plane.
Yeah,
I was on a plane every week, and I like to, and I'm the kind of person that, believe it or not, sitting next to the window is the safest place to be. And if I could find a space between me and another seat, it's not because I'm a big guy, because I'm the kind of guy that if I didn't look, if it wasn't socially awkward, I would wear a mask on a plane, because if someone's coughing next to me, I don't want to be sick for 3 days. Someone coughs next to me, so I think that it's been a social experiment, and I think we needed to train folks. And I think that the fact that we live in a social media world, I think that a lot of our own peers are policing ourselves right? And it's now what's ethical and what's unethical. Is it ethical to be standing in front of someone and talking to them in this new world we live in? No, give people their space. You could talk. There's things you can do. I don't think that we would have gotten as a society, as a free society, like I said, not an authoritarian state where they give you two options: stay home, and you either die from the coronavirus at home, or if you leave, you're going to die because
the Philippines, the president from the Philippines, the same guy who kills.
So my point is that to protect the older people, like I can tell you that the older people or the people that are exposed to this disease or to this virus are going to feel a lot more comfortable participating, with a mask and with gloves after this social, which I call social experiment.
It becomes socially acceptable.
Yeah, an experiment. I think they're gonna now understand that, that people are not gonna say, oh, I can't get it, so I don't care about the, or if I get it, it's not a big deal. That we had to change. I believe this, and this has nothing to do with business. I do believe that we had to change that mentality, and it's the same mentality that's living at home with their parents at 30 years old and hasn't had to go to work. And I think, and I gotta jump here, Jesus, but I think the biggest thing that we've learned, there's a lot of folks, and a lot of you have, employees or have businesses or work with other people. There's a lot of folks right now that you couldn't get to show up and sit at an open house because times were good, that would be dying to do that right now. I think, we had, because of where employment was, I couldn't get a plumber to show up to my house to fix something, or the AC guy to come out. Just to, I think that, we needed to kind of reset the mindset back to the made in America, back to being less dependent, but also our workforce, there's certain jobs that they did not want to do, and we weren't doing, and people didn't want to do certain things. And I think that, this is in many ways, it's painful, but this reset button, I think, is going to position us to come out of this with a different outlook on life, but more importantly on business, and how, the work ethic, right? Like think about how many folks, not even for financial reasons, think about how many folks just want to go to work, right? Forget about whether they need the money or not. They just want to go to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting. I'd really love to see if Jesus, if you can bring me back, in a couple of weeks, and we'll see where, we'll
like an update.
Well, I mean, we'll revisit this, and if there's one thing we all know, and it has nothing to do with the virus or whenever, because we've been through one of these. If there's one thing we all know, is that, we don't know anything, right? But these conversations and the fact that we could have a dialogue, and that we could vent, and that we could, opine on what's happening, and the fact that we're at a point now, myself, you, and Cadillac, where we're leaders in our industry. And when I say leaders, I don't mean because of the position, because of title, because of monies that we've been fortunate to make, because you and me both know that we've made a lot of money, we've lost a lot of money. But the point of these conversations is that we've come back from it. And at the end of the day, this is the game we play.
What's that keg stand? The keg stand saying that you have was one of my favorite ones. Our competition is either doing a keg stand. What is it?
I say, yeah. I say my kids go to private. I want my kids to go to private school, not because I think they're going to get a better education, but because I want them to do keg stands one day with the CEO of a company. So maybe if they're not smart, they at least can get a job.
Well, no, there's another one that we have that our competition right now is either too young, is too old, or is doing keg stands.
I said that in 2008, but we're the old guys now. But I said in 2008 when we were going through that crisis.
Yeah.
And with nothing happening, I said, listen, here's the good news. Our competition right now is either old and retiring, or is in college doing keg stands and they don't even know what happened, right?
Yeah, they didn't live through it.
They don't know if their dad, took a thing of pills because he couldn't, a bottle of pills because he couldn't pay the bills, and he survived because he couldn't even do that right at the time, right? They don't know that, right. And so we put ourselves in a position to learn from that, and I think we're stronger for it now today. And I think the one thing we learned, Jesus, in that downturn, that in this one, we're paying more attention. We're learning. Like these conversations we're having right now and these things that we're doing.
We would have killed for the knowledge we have now in 2008. You kidding me?
Right. And we're learning just by having the conversation right now. And we learned that, guess what? You might not be able to make as much money as you want right now, but you could really spend time learning and preparing yourself. And so I appreciate you having me on here.
It's been an hour, and it's supposed to be half an hour, Mark.
There's one more thing I
appreciate it, man.
Get this out there because, one people, we talk about World War II and we talk about what happened with World War II, and the United States got its ass kicked for the first 2 years. I mean, up and down, left and right, they lost everything. But one thing you never do is bet against us because we do find a way, a place where people are free to innovate and benefit from that their innovation, their intellectual property is the best place in the world to be in a situation like this where the crap is up against the fan and everybody's racing to try to get an answer. This is still the best place to be. And so, I agree with that. Made in America is going to be a good thing, especially when it's slapped on that vaccine.
Let's leave it with that positive America. All right, Mark, love you, buddy. Thanks, man.
Hey, by the way, I'll leave you with this. Thank you. That's the new race to the moon, right? Is the vaccine.
Yep.
I think when you look at historical times and what things meant, and just showing that, I think coming up with a cure for this, that is the new vaccine, and I do think that we're going to be better prepared for the next one. I mean, if you live in South Florida and you've been through a hurricane. It's pretty much a formality. It's a formality. It's a formality now, right? And if before a hurricane you talked about, having a generator and all the things that we do, and the way we can prepare and be ready within days. If you talked about having to do that, 15 years ago, you would say the world is ending. And so I agree, Kat. Like we'll get through this. We'll adapt and.
Hey, Mark, if you don't mind, since I just got the new sound effects, I'm going to leave you with some applause, okay? Hey, a couple laughs. You got a couple laughs in there? All right, Mark. I love you, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Okay, man. Bye.